Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Erudition Network on Thursday night. This is the Erudition Network, Black History Interactive. My name is Eddie Phillips. I am your host, and I want to thank you for being with us. I apologize for us being a little tardy today. We had internet issues. Last night, our internet completely went out. I did not know if we were going to even be able to do a show today, but I do believe in consistency. I often tell my family that that's a big thing with us, to be consistent in what we bring to Erudition. So I am happy that we were able to resolve much of that, and I am with you tonight. If you are new to this program, this is the Erudition Network Interactive. And what we do here every Thursday night is I come on. My name is Eddie Phillips. I am a public historian. What does that mean? That means that I am not aligned, owned, dictated, conditioned by any public universities or obsequious individuals who would like to manipulate and tell us what history is. So what we try to do here is bring you fact-based history, where we go into things that are not always covered in our schools. And not only that, we cover things that oftentimes have been mistaught, so that we have a better understanding of who we are and where we come from as members of the African culture, African diaspora, and knowing where we originated from beyond a 1619 idea of slavery. So that says a lot, but that is what we do here. I want to say thank you to all of the 30 plus members who have joined Erudition over the last 4 days. We put out a general invite a few days ago, I think last week, and we've had about 30 some individuals who have joined and followed, I should say, the network on Facebook, and I greatly appreciate it. You can take that a step further by joining the Erudition Network Interactive History Sessions, which is a group on Facebook where we a lot of times put things on that you may not get on the general Erudition page. That group is important because it allows me to share further information after we do these broadcasts, and after my wife and my children do their broadcasts. So please feel free to go in groups and take your support a step further and join us. And then follow us. Click the like and subscribe, I should say, on YouTube, so that you may be able to get on and during these interactives and during these sessions, and we can see your input. I will tell you, last week that I found that there were people who were sending questions or sending information, and I didn't see it. Whatever Facebook is doing, I don't control. I don't own Facebook, but I will tell you that sometimes we don't see your interactions, and that disturbs me. So if I go further and I don't admonish that you are one of the people watching, or um, your comments aren't appearing on the program, please, please, please don't hesitate to go to our YouTube page, and we should see whatever it's a live chat. So we should see whatever it is that you're putting in, and I can comment on what it is that you're talking about. And we can definitely get your interactions. I don't want anybody to feel that they're not being heard, and or that we are ignoring um, their interactions, or what they're doing, or what they're trying to say, or their opines. Um, so please, please, please feel free to do that. Tonight, um, I'm gonna try to give it a few more minutes to see if we get some other people to come in. But tonight, I really want to kind of get into what we weren't able to get into last week. Last week, I wanted to kind of go down the history of the Palestinian and the Afro-Palestinian. I don't know if many of you um, are not aware of the issues going on with Hamas and Israel, and the effect that it is having on Palestinian people. Um, it is atrocious, it is sickening, and there are many, many people being killed. Um, Innocents, we have to be honest, who are being killed. Um, Hamas did a violent act last year in October, and they took hostages and they killed. That is a fact. But now we're looking at hundreds of thousands of Palestinian people um, who are now suffering, whose children are being killed, murdered um, by dropping bombs from Israel in retaliation to what Hamas did. We're seeing starvation of children, and it is a world atrocity. It should not be seen as just a regional war or regional conflict or terrorist conflict. What we're seeing here is an atrocity, and we have to address it, right? The um, the Gaza Health Ministry is speculating that 30,000 Palestinians, right, have died, but they believe that that is an understatement, because there are many times when these bombs and things go down, when these missiles are shot, there are bodies that have not been recovered. So there could be more, 40 to 50,000 Palestinians who have lost their lives, men, women, and children. And we just have to understand that this horror affects all of us. So I had one of my friends from the Navy um, who we almost had a falling out over this. And I reminded him during this political season that I have spoken out about Palestine probably more than anyone else that I have known for years, because I was talking about this almost 2 decades ago. It was my view, as a person who's traveled all over um, the world, that this was a horror that we were seeing, and a mistreatment that we were seeing, um, that dates back quite some time, even beyond this war, even beyond what we know, what we're currently seeing, I should say. Um, I want us to discuss this openly, and regardless of who joins us tonight, regardless of who tunes in tonight, um, it is a history that we need to go over, and we will take some time to go into tonight. All right. However, I gave people time to get in here. I see two people. If you're one of those two people, please drop a line. Let us know who you are so that we can um, admonish you at your comments. As I said, I want you to be heard and I want your opines to be recognized. So you can do that now. Just let us know who you are. If this is your first time watching the program, are you one of my family members who actually aren't here sometimes? Any of that, it will be greatly appreciated. And if I'm not seeing that, then that tells you go to YouTube. There may be something going on with Facebook. All right. I'm putting in right now a reminder, and I'm also dropping in our YouTube channel for people because yeah, I it was disturbing to me last week that I got off of the program and I didn't realize that there are a lot of comments that I hadn't seen. People who had asked questions and things, and I was like, wow, that's not cool, especially when you do an interactive program like we do. Um, I want to be able to hear you um, because we're growing as a network and as a channel. So um, I don't know what's going on tonight. I don't know if there's a game tonight because that also plays into sometimes I come on and there are basketball games and sports events, and you know, you really can't compete with that with some folks if they want to watch it. And I understand, hey, I get it. I don't watch as many sports as I used to. And so I get it. Uh, but I admonish you that if you do miss the sessions, please join us. Watch it later and send your comments and your questions later on. I promise you um, that I will answer them as quickly and as efficiently and as factually as I possibly can. All right, I'm sending this out. And then we're going to get into this lesson tonight. All right. So let's talk about this. Sorry. One of the things I try to do, hey, Eric, how are you? One of the things I try to do is open up um, the program with questions. So let's take about 5 minutes in this program for you to, whatever question that you have, um, historical or whatever, ask that question. I was looking for this. Ask that question, and we will go into it. Whatever is sticking on your mind, this is your opportunity right now during the interactive to ask a question, and we can go into that succinctly and factually to give you an answer or give you a place that you can go to get a better answer. So please feel free to do that now and drop your questions in there. I'll give you a few moments. If we have absolutely no questions, then we will move on. I don't want us to stagnate, and I really want to get into this topic tonight. No questions, you all? It's for y'all on here. Nobody got no questions? Nothing? Nothing just off the chain. We're in a political season. We're in a story. History is every day. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All right. Okay. I won't belabor it. I won't beat it to death. I'll move on. So tonight, let's talk about these issues. One of the things that a lot of us don't understand is our connection and relation to Palestinian people. We um, we don't um, get the history. We don't get the history of the Afro-Palestinian, um, and how their lives interact with ours, right? And it's quite interesting because I'm going to try to share. I'm going to try to share my Mapify. Lately we have been greatly using Mapify, and I'm going to use that tonight as we go into this subject. And also, if you're watching us tonight, please share, encourage folks to get on, ask questions. Let's get into this. All right, I'm going to share my screen so you can see my Mapify. And if it needs to be clearer, you all let me know if you need me to enlarge the Mapify in any kind of way. I can see right now we're going to have to, so I'm going to make it about 120. All right. We won't cover every era, but we're going to cover some of it. One of the things I really wanted to get in tonight is the understanding of the Canaanite, Phoenician, Israeli connection. The Palestinian people are a mixed culture of people. And because of that, we have to understand that they go back very far. In ancient times, we have the Canaanite Philistines interaction. So we have those cultural connections in there. We have the biblical era where we see, and a lot of people seems to reference this, a lot of the Palestinian people and their interactions. What I want to get into tonight, just because of, I don't want to talk about, and we could do that later, any of the Crusades or anything. I want us to get into this era, right? I want us to get into the 20th century and beyond. We have to understand, as we look at this, the people who are responsible for what is going on with Palestine. I should say one of the things I would like to touch on is that African Muslims, and as I write my second book, we speak a lot about this. African Muslims who went into Jerusalem, they had pilgrimages, they had interactions with Israel, right? They stayed in Palestine. They married into Palestinian families. They established African families in Palestine. And we can trace this information all the way back to the era of the Crusades. We can trace it all the way back to the Ottomans. You see that here, and how they came in, but they did not want. History makes us see everyone as conquerors. And many of them didn't want to conquer. They came in with the idea, if you go look into Saladin and what was going on during the Crusades, they were willing to share Jerusalem. It is the desire of conquest and the desire of imperialism and the desire of murderers of that time, as you talk about the Middle Ages, that wanted to control. Many people talk to me about how Muslims took Africans, and there was an African slave trade in the Islamic world that precedes that of the Middle Passage. But often we get something wrong. We assume that every Muslim was trying to conquer the African, and we forget how Islam, and I will tell you, I am not a Muslim, but I am a person who believes in facts. right? How how Islam influenced African behavior, how the identifier of Islam allowed them to grow their education, to grow their economies, and to accept it more so than Christianity, because back in the Middle Ages, the Africans saw Christianity as an oppressive due to the influence of Europeans who came down into Africa and what we now call the Middle East, which was all known as Africa pretty much at that time, and came down and inflicted horrors upon people, which is very close to what we're seeing now, killing men, women, and children. And while we tell people we go with the idea of convert or die for the Muslim, we forget that the Christian religion killed more and then took their killing over into the New World. And so the open arms of Islam allowed nations to grow. There are dark parts of Islam. I'm not going to tell you that there aren't. But that is not, just like you, if you're a Christian, you cannot say that every Christian is evil. However, you also can't not dissuade the fact that the Ku Klux Klan and many other racist groups, the Nazis, proclaimed to do certain things under the guise of God. And so the Christian God. And so we can't ignore those facts. And I know it's an unsettling thing, and maybe people won't watch tonight. I don't care. As I've told you many times before, history is not comfortable, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But what I want to talk about is the failure, okay? You see that going into the Crusades, we see the horrors that were going on. But let's talk about something here. Let's talk about the British. In the 20th century, after World War I, it was called the British Mandate Period. You can go look this up. And during the British Mandate Period, there was an extreme push and increase of Africans who went to Palestine. Why? Because the British took out of slavery, took what we see as laborers, and they took them from Central Africa. They took them from Nigeria, from Senegal, from Chad, and they helped to build a lot of what you see as the infrastructure of what we see as Jerusalem today. And so when you look at the idea of the British Mandate Period right here, right after World War I, you saw, they say, increased Jewish immigration, but they leave out the idea of the African. The Africans who went in and intermarried, and that is why you see so many dark-skinned Palestinians when you watch the news nightly and see people who look just like you and me. That British Mandate Period is important because it is something that we often don't talk about. It is something that we often don't look to. And many of us, I might even say, unless you are joining us tonight, don't even know about. You probably have never heard it in your history books. You probably have never been told it. And so it removes you from the idea that there are Africans or Black people who helped to build what you now see as Israel and Palestine. They had a mandate. They were to go in and build those territories. Now, even before World War II, there were already plans to bring the Jewish people back into Palestine. But this proposed idea by the League of Nations at the time, before the United Nations, was that this area would develop into a self-governing place of both Jewish, African, and Palestinian. That it would not be just something that would be one-sided. The British had a mandate. The French had a mandate. This was something that was established to try to supposedly help. And so even before that, the Africans were given pretty much no real power. Why do I say that? Because when you look at 1920, right, and you look in July of 1920, there was a man named Sir Herbert Samuel. He was a Zionist. He was put in as a high commissioner. And his focus was to develop a place for Jewish people, right, to grow into a national home, a national place. So there were already eyes on this area that we see as Israel well before 1948. And so it used Africans, it used Arabs, it used the intermixed people of that time. But that's what it was. That's what it was. Now, unfortunately for what we see now, and this is the history that it bothers me. It bothers me because I don't think we see it as we should, because we have our own problems over here. Right? When the Zionist militias came in, right, in 1948, it was the African Palestinians who sided and tried to fight off what they thought was a incoming force of violence. So this fight that you see in this area between the Jewish, predominantly European Jews who came into the area, and the Afro-Palestinians and Palestinians who have been there since the 12th century, who can trace their lineage back further, right? We ignore that. We ignore that. And it is such a sad indicator for us, because a lot of the Palestinians, a lot of the Afro-Palestinians and Africans who traveled to Palestine identified with the African struggle, especially in the 60s, the Black struggle here in the United States, to such a point where they identified Harlem and they identified Black areas, and they tried to draw a line, a connection with us that we often now ignore. We ignore their diaspora. We ignore their building of the very place where they're being told they are tertiary and secondary citizens. And I'm going into some specific history because this is a very big subject. This is a very big subject. When you look at the Nakba, and again, I asked someone recently what that is, and they did not know. They had no idea what I was talking about. The Nakba means a catastrophe. That's what it means. Muslims call it. And it is referred to as the displacement and dispossession of the Palestinians, and how their society, the society that they were told during the British Mandate that they could be a part of, but after World War II, they were pushed out during what was called the Palestinian War. And they were, that land that we see that we now call Israel was taken from them. Think about that. It was taken from them. Many refer to being in their homes one day and kicked out of their homes the next, because the Zionist militias came in and the Israeli army came in and took their homes. People who just a few years before had been put into ghettos by the Nazis, who had everything taken from them by the Nazis. European Jews who went down to Palestine and took land and property that had been developed by Africans. Africans, literally, who came and were recruited by the British and taken by the British and used by the British to build that area up. And then we wound up having the Palestinian, the rejection of return, or the rejection of the right of return. You can't, this is not yours, and you can't come back. Now, I want you to think about this history, because I'm sure many Palestinians know this history. I know they know their history, a lot of them. But they can't share it here in America, because when it is shared in facts, they are told that they're being militant, radical. If we see, right, the Holocaust as a genocide, as something evil, then why can't we see the rejection of the right of return as something just as evil? Why can't we see the displacement of maybe close to over 500,000 Palestinians from their homes and towns that they built, as an atrocity? Why is it that the Nakba is not as known or related as what we hear about the Holocaust, about the lynching of African Americans, about the nadir of African Americans in America? Doesn't it sound familiar? Don't you see the similar situations in Rosewood and towns like Tulsa, where people come in and they take? It is estimated from 500 to 800 Palestinian villages and homes were destroyed during the Nakba. towns that they had built to live. Before the Nakba, before 1948, you could look at maps, you could look at things, and you would see Palestine. People would tell you, I am a Palestinian, I'm from Palestine. And then what did it do? For most of my life, I was told that, and I never understood it. I never understood it. I was told that people were Palestinian refugees. Do y'all remember that? The three of you I got here right now on the live. Do you remember hearing about Palestinian refugees? That's the way they were termed. All throughout the 80s, the 90s, that's what we saw. Refugees. And I understand that, Eric, that there are people who are innately racist, and I agree with you that they are innately racist. And we have to understand too that the double whammy of this that has always gotten to me is that at the establishment of Israel, the people, the Zionists who were in power, many of them, a lot of the folks that came in, they were European Jews. Not people who had lived in Palestine and what was known as Palestine. They were outsiders who came in almost the same way as which the Crusaders came in and claimed that God willed it, and they took land. They took property. They killed people. And the bigotry and racism of America, who was just as bigoted and racist at the time, supported it. And still to this day has signed its agreement to support it. Now, I'm not giving you radical opinion tonight. That's one of the things that I wanted to do with this episode and with this. I wanted to give you facts, because facts are stubborn, and I don't want you to be out here just hearing folks scream free Palestine and not understand, because there are some who are activational activists. In other words, they come along because something is in the media, but they don't have any stake in the game. And the next big thing that pops in the media, they'll activate on that too. But I wanted you to understand tonight that this is a long history. This is a long history. When you look at the Nakba and the diaspora, that was people being pushed out. Being pushed out. Now, when we get down to the 6-Day War and occupation, if you come in and you take something from me, and this is the reason why men like Anwar Sadat and others, why they sided with the Palestinian, why the African nations assigned themselves and stood beside them, because they're equally of the same culture, and they understood that. But we gave weapons and capability to Israel to defend itself. And then we get into where we are today. where we are today. We're in a very foul place. Racism is showing its ugly head all over the world. We went from 500,000 Palestinians estimated being displaced in 1948 to what was estimated to be 6 to 7 million Palestinian refugees scattered throughout what we call the Middle East, the Muslim world. But we ignore the atrocity. We pretend that these people don't have an argument in the conflict. We are radicalizing another generation of Palestinian people. I was looking as I was studying for looking over things for this episode. And did you know throughout the world, the Israeli people want you to remember the Holocaust? If you defame, if you minimize the Jewish Holocaust, you are seen as something evil. But do you know that Israel has laws and has enforced those laws for Palestinians to discuss or to publicly commemorate what happened during the Nakba? They are told to not admonish it. When the UN said they wanted to recognize it, Israel fought against it. It is again this idea that if we don't share history and its fact and its truth, that it can be ignored. And one of the things I really wanted to do tonight, more than anything, was I wanted to talk about it and its truth. I want you to understand that it ain't just what's being said in the general public right now. It's not about where we are and who we are. And I'd ask you all, of the 3 people I got here tonight and those who you watch later, please tell me how many of you knew about the Nakba. Before our discussion or our interactive tonight, be honest. Put it in chat. Did you know about the Nakba? I'll give you a moment. Eric, you're not the only one in here. Who knew about the Nakba? Yes, no. Eric, you said not until October 7th. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I knew about it many, many years ago, and I would talk to people when they would ask me about Palestine. And I would say, racism is everywhere. Murderous racism is everywhere. Even in the land of Jesus, people are still killing and murdering and lying. There are many books for you to go out if you think that it's a lie. You can go out there and get many books. I think one of the greatest books is a book called Nakba and Survival. It escapes me who wrote that, but go and get Nakba and Survival. And that's a really great book, giving you the story of the Palestinians who, because of familiar and because of who they were, tried to stay. Tried to stay. Great book. Go get it. Go read it. There are multiple books out there. I will try to get somewhat of a list for you all if you are interested. But I want you to understand the power of colonization after World War I, the power of New World imperialism after World War II, and people who have been pushed to the bottom. Often when people talk to me about Palestine, I tell them we got problems over here. We do. And their problems and our problems seem to interact with each other. They tend to coalesce. And if we look at the history, and it is a disturbing thing that Americans very rarely know their own history. They know less of their own, African Americans specifically, I'm speaking to you, know less about their own history than people who are not even in the country. There's a reason why when Malcolm X went overseas and when he went to Mecca and when he went to go visit with African leaders, his mind changed. He saw it no longer as an American civil rights issue, but a world issue in which people have manipulated, lied, and stolen to keep many folks lost and ignorant to who and what they are. So I don't have an issue with discussing this because I know what I'm talking about. It is amazing to me how we tend to not know who we are. There was a reason why Africans were sent to build infrastructure in Jerusalem. There was a reason why the Ottomans, in that chart that I showed you, which we will post online, assigned Africans, Palestinian, Afro-Palestinian Africans, to guard the Temple Mount, to be guardians of Jerusalem. And they took care of it. They built it. They made it beautiful. But we take that history away. We lie about it. And Americans, we have to be better because we draw a line. And I'm going to tell you, as a person who spent a considerable amount of time over in a Muslim country as a Christian and was told by Muslims that they are taught to love the Christian as brothers, the real Christian, because what they see through the eyes of oppression is the same thing the African. As I'm writing this book on the Middle Ages, is the same thing that the African during the Middle Ages saw in Christianity. And this proposed idea of Christianity, it's not what they saw biblically. This proposed idea of Christianity that pushes murder, imperialism, savagery, all in the name of God. Whether you're Spanish, whether you're British, whether you're French, of Germanic origin, all of these European people came down with the idea of conquering. The conquistadors came over with a dictate saying that they were there to teach you religion as given to them by the Catholic Church. And that if you did not follow, even though you didn't speak their language, they would kill you, take land from you, under the permission of God. The Crusades showed the same issue. This is not new. This is history. And history has a connective tissue to the present. Who you were informs who you will be. And it's important. It's important. I came on here tonight because I really, after dealing with the internet and dealing with some issues this week, I thought I could just push this off. But I saw a story the other night. Me and Tina were sitting down watching the news of a man. I got 4 kids. And I love them. They're 2 of them are adults, 2 on their way to being an adult. But me and my wife, we love our children. And a man, he had just had twins, a Palestinian man. And he walked out of his house after his wife had just delivered his children. And she was there with her mother. And he was going to go get their birth certificates. And munition from Israel hit where they lived and killed his wife, his babies, and his mother-in-law. And to hear that man scream, I had to turn it off. To hear that man scream and to know the history. I don't see it as something we shouldn't talk about. I don't go down the line of, well, this is not something that we should discuss because it radicalizes. This is anti-American. That's a lie. The truth is, babies, women, young children, because we don't typically care about the males, but they're dying. They're dying. They're dying for radicalism and lunacy. They're dying because nations haven't gotten out of the idea that these are people. They're dying because the African Palestinian, the Palestinian, and the Muslim, and all of these people are considered less than. Some of the people who are doing this to them come from families who are Holocaust survivors, who Hitler either killed half their family, starved them, and now you're watching the same thing be done to others. And if it doesn't make your blood boil, if it doesn't make you understand, but that's the power of history. When it's denied, people don't even think about it. You don't know about the Nakba. You don't know about the diaspora. You don't know about the mandate to not be able to return. You don't know about the 500,000 Palestinians that were dislocated. You don't know about the towns that were burned down, the properties that were taken, the people who were killed. Because it's more important to recognize some people's history than your own. We don't know about the denial of cultures telling you you can't even discuss it, which then by term of just anger causes conflict. Because now I can't discuss my history as you mistreat me and abuse me. And if we can't find a connection here as African Americans, as people, as Americans, and see that as something that should connect us to our Palestinian brethren and sisters. When I started to write my books, and I knew that I was going to do 3 books. I knew the first one was going to be this one, and it was going to be early world, and I was going to focus on where history began to some extent, because it's massive for the African. And I wanted to talk about the forgotten cultures and who they were and where they came from. But I knew that this was just the beginning and that there is a middle. And if you know anything about narrative, right? Even with this timeline here, you see what is called a timeline. Well, narrative shows us that in that timeline, there is a beginning, the origination of what something is. It's important because it establishes where you're going to go. But that middle part is conflict. It's confrontation. It's when the individuals or the people or whoever in that narrative go through their most trying moments. It's the longest part of a narrative. It takes up the most of the story, the bulk of the story. And then we come into what is called a resolution, how the story is resolved to answer the question or the concern from the beginning of the narrative. And understandably, we're starting to see, as I'm going through these books, as I'm writing these books, you're going to see, right? The middle. How we started to change, how the African was seen as something different, how the people of color were seen as something different, how they were seen as something less than human, and how they were treated despite what they bought. Whether it be the Moors into Europe, rather it be the Africans who bought things into what we now see as Jerusalem or Israel. into the Middle East. And as we start to ignore the connections between the Middle East, the Muslim, the Christian, and the African, and we dwell on the religion of the European that was imposed on us, often through violence, and then translated itself or moved itself over into the Americas, into the New World, and infected the thoughts of folks over here. I hope you got something from tonight's episode. I tried to be as factual as I possibly could. I tried to tell you all the truth without getting overly political, without getting overly radical, because I don't think that answers the problems of the day. But at the same time, right, I want you all to understand that history, it is just another part of the African diaspora. And because of the diaspora that connects all of us, the migration, the influence, it is something you need to study. It's something you need to study. My friend Pastor Razor wrote in his books about the connection and the thing that God had given to the African to be that protector. And as you read through the history, you see that they have always been. They are the builders. They are the creators. They are the ones who take care of. They are the ones who are called upon. Rather you're Afro-Phoenician, Afro-Palestinian, rather you whatever you are in history, that's what they were. That's what they have been. That's not a lie. That's not a hyperbole. That's not a radicalism. That's not militant. That's a fact. That's a fact. It's painful as I pray for these families and I pray for a ceasefire and that people all over the world start to understand that Palestinian people are people. They're people. We shouldn't be watching babies starve. We shouldn't be seeing fathers and mothers screaming in horror and in pain at the loss of their children. I pray for a peaceful resolution to this problem and the removal of all of those evil people, obsequious and whatever, who are standing in trying to continue it for political or radical or violent or empirical reasons. And I ask you to go and do some study on the Nakba. I ask you to go in. I'm going to put that in chat. And know what it is. And recognize your connection to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. We had 3 of you all in here tonight. I appreciate you. Eric, you're the only one that chimed in. I think the rest must have been my family because they said absolutely nothing. But I thank you all who joined us live. And I ask that you all who watch this program, because there are many of you who watch after the fact, please, please, please feel free to leave comments, disagreements, whatever it may be. And God willing, we will be here with you again next week. If I'm putting my banner on because I always forget. If you want to support the Erudition Network and grow knowledge and understanding in Black studies, we have a Cash App, and that is the Erudition Network. $ the Erudition Network. We appreciate and admonish any of you who give and help us as we grow this network. All right, I'm gonna get out of here, and hopefully I will see you all again next week. I thank you for your time and your patience as we were trying to get on earlier with our internet. And like I said, I hope to see you again next week. Thank you all. Be blessed.